which is going to allow us to write Python code that is able to dynamically generate HTML and CSS, ultimately allowing us to build a dynamic web application. So what is this now going to enable us to do that we weren't able to previously do using just HTML and CSS? Well, using HTML and CSS, the web pages that we created were static web pages. They were the same, and every time you visited the web page, the page you were looking at was identical. But ultimately, if you think about websites you interact with on a day-to-day basis, say like the New York Times, for example, it's not the case that every time you go to the New York Times homepage, you're seeing the exact same HTML. It changes. The next day, you might see the new date, you might see the next day's articles. Whenever someone comments on an article, you can see those comments, and you can see how many people have commented on an article, for example. And it's probably not the case that someone is sitting there updating the HTML of the New York Times website every time something changes, but rather more likely there is some program, maybe written in Python, maybe written in some other language, that is dynamically generating that HTML and CSS and allowing the web application to respond based on how users are interacting with it. And this is ultimately what we're going to be trying to create using this Django web framework. We're going to be creating software that's going to run on a web server such that clients running in their web browser can make requests to our web server, and our server is going to respond back with some sort of response. And so how does this process actually happen? Well, ultimately it boils down to this protocol, HTTP, otherwise known as the Hypertext Transfer Protocol, which is the protocol for